Good afternoon, colleagues who have joined us online, and good morning to our colleagues here in New York. So this is the third and final day of the IMS training sessions that we've been running. Today we're going to cover the session on the report builder, which I think is one of the exciting parts of the IMS. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction. Then I'll hand over to my colleague Martha from Development Gateway. She's also there with her colleague Carmen, and she will then give us a brief structure of how the session will run, and then we'll basically kickstart the session. We will also have 15 minutes or so for questions and answers at the end. So I suggest when we come to that, you just type your questions in the chat, and we will basically run through the questions and respond to them. We also want to try to wrap up at 10 or promptly after 10, as we have to vacate this room because of another meeting. So we will try to respond to all questions, but at the same time trying to keep the time. So just to run you quickly through my presentation, my introduction. Yeah. Okay. So I hope you can all see the slide on the screen. This is basically just to give you a context to the IMS and why the data is important for us, and why we're also running this session today to obviously help all of us as users to be able to do analysis using the IMS. So it is a system for planning, tracking, and monitoring of progress on UN coherence and coordination. What the IMS has been able to do for us is essentially ensure that we have a baseline data for global level discussions and policy decision-making processes. It's also been able to facilitate increased knowledge of the operational implications of coordination, and also help us to gather data, information, and statistics to feed into debates, current debates, events, such as the QCPR, and enable us to give presentations to member states on how we're doing on UN coherence. And the final thing is that this data helps us basically to report on the use of funds, and specifically the UNDG cost-sharing funds. So those are some of the kind of use of the data and the purpose of the IMS. So we ran 2 sessions already. Today is really focusing on how you as a user can do analysis using the IMS. So there are a number of times we get asked the questions here, or you may get asked the questions where you need a quick response, and this tool is basically going to help you to do that. So there's just some examples on the screen of some of the questions that you will be able to analyze once you're able to use this tool. I'm not going to read through the questions, so as you can see them, and for example, we get asked the number of countries with an UNDAP, and the number of UN cities with a joint communication strategy, etc., etc. So just to say that the context of this training is to help you answer these questions quickly by using this tool. So I'm now going to hand over to my colleague in DC, Martha, from Development Gateway, who is going to then kickstart the session.
Excellent. Thank you, Abigail. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone joining on the call. I'm going to, today, with support from my colleague Carmen, we are going to walk you through how to use the IMS Report Builder tool, which is, in addition to the other reporting mechanisms available in the IMS, definitely the most robust analytical tool. This also means it's the most complex because it is a very powerful, flexible tool. So it can be a little daunting and overwhelming. Hopefully by the time we're done today, you'll have a good grasp on the structure of the system, how it works, and what you would do to go in and find some data. So I'm going to begin by mentioning that there is a specific separate user guide just for the report builder, which you can download on the front page of the site without even logging in. Right below the login box, there is a list of documents which can be downloaded. It's currently the bottom one, the IMS Guide to the Report Builder, which is a supplement to the main IMS user guide. You can also download. Or if you are already logged in and you would like to access this, you can just click the support link at the upper right of any page on the site and find the same document to download. So I definitely encourage you to keep a copy of that on your hard drive because it will hopefully answer a lot of questions or be a refresher after this course. We will also be shortly posting links on the site to the recording of this presentation, as well as those done earlier in the week, which cover the system more broadly. So you can review those at your leisure or share with colleagues who aren't able to attend. So to get us started, this is the main dashboard of the IMS. On the right here, we have the two data entry modules, the work plan and progress, as well as the coordination profile. Today, however, we are focusing on the reports section. If you click on reports on the left here, you are sent to the report dashboard, which shows you all the different ways you can access data within the system. Yesterday, we covered how the other tools work, including the file download, exporting country data, and a number of standard reports. Today, what we're focusing on is the report builder, this link on the lower left here. So I'm going to go ahead, click that, and it opens up the tool for me. So to give you a bit of context, we're going to right now cover sort of the conceptual structure of the system and what information is included in here and what information is not. Then we'll discuss actually running a report, which is, we'll call it making a table, and how to filter your information so that you are getting a subset of the data you really want. And then we'll move on from there to talk about saving your reports and how you can turn them into visualizations in the form of charts and graphs. And we will show you a few other ways to crunch the data and leave some time for questions at the end. So you're able to type them in the chat box there, I believe, and we'll cover those towards the end of the session. So this is the screen you see once you open the report builder. As you can see, it's a blank slate. And on the left here, you have a column called cubes. This particular kind of tool is based on a data structure called data cubes. So this is a particular way that data can be crunched and analyzed. It allows you to cross-reference many different types of data in a number of different ways. So if I click on the cube drop down here, I get a very long list of topic areas. This list corresponds to where in the system users entered data. So you are able to skim through and find whichever section you are interested in. Now, you don't need to know off the top of your head, oh, business operation areas, that's section 4, I'll go here and find that. Within that user guide that I mentioned, you will find a list that lets you see where all of the different types of data are. I just want to pull this up here so that you can quickly see it. So this is the user guide. Near the end, one of the annexes shows you, here's a list of cubes available in the report builder. So you can use this as a reference. Just below that annex, you have some specific definitions, including a list of every field in the report builder. So where this is useful is you can do a find in the PDF so that you can see, oh, hey, I'm interested in, let's say, gender. Where would I find those fields? And you can see, oh, all right, I see the cube is this particular cube 13, the gender equality scorecard. So this will be a useful reference tool for you when you're approaching the system with such a large set of data within it. So returning back to the report builder here, you'll note that within each section there are 2 or 3 different cubes. So we have here a general cube and a joint programs cube, or a business operations areas and a general cube. Every cube here has this general piece of information, as well as a more specialized set of data, which you can use distinctly. We'll get into this. It'll make a little more sense in a moment. I also want to note that the first 14 sections here are all about information collected in the coordination profile. However, if you are interested in information from the work plan, that is at the bottom here, and you have a number of different subsets of data, the activity count, budget, and outputs. So we're going to get started, move away from the conceptual, and choose this business operations area cube. So I'll do that, and you will see that here on the left, you suddenly have 2 different lists, measures and variables. So these are the 2 types of data that the system includes everywhere. Everything you, every report you run or every table that you make in the report builder needs to have 1 measure and 1 variable. So a measure is going to be something you can quantify. I'm going to click on the little arrow here to open up this list. And you can see here there are several different ways that the data collected in this particular section is countable, quantifiable. So number of business operations areas, count of long-term agreement, annual value of total procurement, all quantifiable. Variables can be quantifiable information. They also can be something like region or country or any of these sort of more qualitative types of information, management modality, for example. So the first thing that you want to remember when you are beginning to build any report, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is that the system contains by default data from every year. So currently that is the 2015 and 2016 reporting cycles. Over time that will of course grow. We will cover in a few minutes how to filter that so that you are only getting the current year if that's what you're interested in. But please do remember that the data you're going to get if you just run a basic search without doing any filtering for year is you'll be getting every year together. So if the data you're getting seems to not match what you're expecting, maybe that is the reason. But before we can get to filtering, let's just go ahead and build a basic table. So as I said, every table must contain a measure and a variable. It can contain more than one of either, but 1 is the minimum for each. So we'll go ahead and choose on the left here. If I just click number of business operations areas, that appears here in the measures box. So essentially what you're dealing with here is a desktop or dashboard, if you will, that has all of your options on the left in this left-hand column. Then these boxes here near the middle are the playing field of data that you're actually working with. So you're able to interact with and move around the particular search terms or variables you're interested in this middle section. And then on the right is where your data is going, your query or your table is going to be shown. So just to understand the landscape flowing from left to right here. We've chosen our measure, so we're going to go ahead and choose a variable. Each of these lists, you'll just need to click to expand it. Some of them only have one item within, some have more. But in this case, we're choosing region. It's the only item here. We're going to click region, and you're going to see it appear over here in this playing field area. So clicking region puts it into the rows section, and instantly you'll see here it has cross-referenced these two pieces of data that we chose. We have our regions here, and we have the number of business operations areas here. So this is the most basic kind of query or table you can create. Two pieces of data, it's a 2x2 or more, and it generates automatically. Now, we're not limited to only, as I said, one piece of information from each set, measures, and variables. You can actually go ahead and add many more pieces. So we'll start out with this delivering as one filter here. If you go ahead and click this, it's going to, by default, appear in rows and will instantly update our table. So take a look at what happens when I click it. Oh, my apologies. Here we go. It shows up in columns because the rows section is already populated. And now we can see here, we have our main pieces of information, the number of business operations areas, sorted by region or disaggregated by region. But then we now also have them separated by column between countries that are delivering as one countries and countries which are not. So you can see columns, putting that delivering as one metric into columns means that it is it corresponds to sorting the data by columns. However, I can drag this, and here's where we start looking at the sort of playing field flexibility. If I drag this item down to rows with my mouse and put it there, suddenly what we have is, this is the same data but crunched in a totally different way. We have the list of regions, and then within each of those regions we have the number of we have the two different delivering as one options, yes or no, and then that count of business operations areas is disaggregated. So it's basically disaggregated twice, first by region and then by delivering as one status. What if you wanted to swap the way that that is aggregated? You're more interested in first sorting out delivering as one countries, and then after that, looking region by region. This is very easy. You look over here, we see we have region first in our list of rows, and then we have delivering as one. If I just drag delivering as one to be above regions, suddenly we have the table swapped so that first we're looking at all the no countries and then the yes countries. So in this case, you might say, okay, now that I've generated this, I can see that among delivering as one countries, here is how each of these regions performs in terms of this number of business operations areas. I'm using the same pieces of data here to try to illustrate the variety and range of ways that you can use the same terms, and moving them around on this playing field area here basically put together different kinds of reports or gain different understandings of the information. One thing to note is that if you are building a table and you are you've chosen the pieces of information you want, but it's not spitting out the data in the way that you find useful, that it may just be a matter of moving around these pieces of information, either within one of the boxes or between these rows and columns areas. So if you'll remember, we started out with delivering as one in columns, and it sorted that out. If I then instead keep delivering as one down here as a row, and I drag region up to a column, now we have a bunch of columns which are our regions. Delivering as one is how our rows are built. And then they're each showing number of business operations areas. So one way you might approach this, and it seems silly, but it can be very useful to actually, if you're trying to figure out exactly what kind of table you need, just grab a blank piece of paper and a pen and draw yourself the chart that you want. And that can be a really useful exercise for thinking through, oh, okay, I do want to have the regional columns, but then have this delivering as one status, for example, with this table as the rows. So again, every report in the system is going to be a table. It's going to have at least one measure and at least one variable. You can have more of either, and you can move them around in order to get different types of charts or tables, rather, over here where it's generated. You might notice, as I've been pointing out, that the tables generate immediately, very quickly. And I think one of the important benefits from that, apart from just the fact that it's nice to not sit there and wait, is that you can feel very free to play around with the data, play around with the fields, just drag them around, and you will immediately see, oh, this is how it changes the table that I'm seeing. I know the system is pretty overwhelming, but it is definitely something that becomes much more manageable and intuitive the more time you spend, as I say, playing around in here, getting comfortable with the data, figuring out, hey, if I move this here, what happens? Again, I know it's hard to find free time, but even if you have just a few minutes after this training or at some other point in your week, if you want to kind of click around, you can see what data is in there, get a sense of what you can do with it, and just kind of get a feel for how the system works. Going back here to the variables on the left, every single cube in the system has a set number, or not set number, but a specific set of variables that are used as filters. I'm sorry, did someone want to say something? No? Okay.
No, we're all set.
Okay, great. So you can see here, they're going to be at the top of your list of variables in every single, no matter what cube you choose to work with. Region, country, delivering as one status, what year it is, country income status, and secondary country income status. So these are universal filters throughout the report builder, because we know that these are very important ways to sort your data or be able to filter it or disaggregate it. So you will find these at the top of any list, and then any list of variables, and then below those, the more specific pieces of data from the cube that you have chosen. So let's say you're here, you've chosen delivering as one and your regions. You realize, wait a minute, I don't want regions as columns. That's too wide, it's kind of unwieldy, it's a little strange. I'd rather have my regions as rows and my delivering as one as columns. You could drag them back and forth. Or if you look up here, we have a little swap axis button, these two arrows. You just click this, it automatically swaps everything in columns and everything in rows. And this becomes more useful once you have multiple pieces of information in each of these if you're building a more complex table. I also want to talk about how you remove data. Let's say, hey, it's actually not useful to me at all to see delivering as one by region. That's more of a country level piece of information. I've changed my mind. It's very easy. You just drag this out of the box and let go, and poof, it disappears. And that's gone. Maybe you realize, oh, I'm more interested, we talked about year before, in seeing how these break down year by year. So I'm going to click year, we'll see it appear in columns, and maybe you can envision what it's going to look like when we add a set of columns breaking this information down by year. And there you go. You see we have our same basic two pieces of information we started with: region, number of business operations areas, and now it's broken down by column so that you can see, for the most current year, I'm interested in this set of data. So you can go ahead and look at it that way. Now, what if you only want to see 2016 data? You don't want 2015 data. It's not relevant to what you're looking at. What we're going to do here is we're going to choose to filter by year. If you see this year variable, we can move this. We've looked at measures. This is where we put, this box is where we put any of the measures we want to use. Columns is an optional variable. That's where year currently is. Rows is this mandatory place for a variable or more than one. Filter is the last box here in our playing field area. So we're going to grab year and drag it all the way down to filter. Now, you can see that year has disappeared as a set of columns, as we would expect. The data is all now mashed back together, which is what it was before we started looking at year. Just putting year in the filter box is not sufficient to actually filter. It's only the first of two steps. So if you put year in the filter box, you can also drag it over directly from the side if you wanted. Then you must click on that item and choose how you want to filter. So in this example, you can see on the left here is the list of all the options. In this case, it's just 2 years, 2015, 2016. The right-hand box is what you're actually going to include in the table. So if you select 2016, then we just use this little arrow to move it from the left-hand box to the right-hand box. So now the left box shows what's available but not included in the table. The right-hand box includes what is in the table. And again, as a reminder, there is a user guide which has all this listed, so you can, with screenshots, so you can kind of follow along if you want to recreate this yourself later. Right now, this looks good, so we're going to click OK, and suddenly we have a smaller subset of data. This is only the 2016 information, but you don't have to clutter it up with a column called 2016 if you don't want to. What if you would like to limit it to be 2016 and just have a column that does show it? In that case, you could drag year back up to column. It's going to show you 2016, and it's still limited because it's the same variable filter right there that you can use. So filtering, the most basic and foundational way to do it is to put your variable into the filter section. However, if you want, you can also leave that variable as one of the columns or one of the rows, and it works the same way. You just click on the name, it opens up this window for you where you choose which pieces you want to include and move them to that right-hand box. So I know this is a lot of information so far. I am going to, in a moment, turn this over to my colleague Carmen. Just want to also mention that we've looked at this whole table with only a single measure, but I did say, well, one measure is required. It is not limited to that. So if I choose another one, like say the count of long-term agreements, and click that, that gets added here. So I'm actually going to remove the number of business operations areas because these two pieces of data maybe aren't very intuitive together. And choose, I already chose count of LTA. I'm going to choose count of LTA evaluated. And now we're seeing these two pieces of information which are interesting in relation to each other. So we can see in the Asia Pacific region for 2016, there were 62 LTAs and 61 of them were evaluated. So good job, Asia Pacific. And this is expandable. We could continue to add measures, as many as there are feasible, and complicate in a good way our table here. Now we've worked only within a single cube, and we have, of course, all these different cubes. Two things it's important to note. Data cannot be cross-referenced across cubes. You must work within a single cube at a time. There's no way to cross-reference, say, your count of long-term agreements with your human rights treaty body's information. It's just not the way the system works. There's no usable baseline. So if you're interested in those two pieces of information, you would just end up making separate cubes and working with that data separately. If you want, you are also able to download your table as an Excel file, which can be very useful because it'll let you continue crunching those numbers in even more complex ways, especially if you are a big Excel fan. Right up here, you can see you just have this Excel icon and the export button. We're going to go ahead and click that, and it's downloaded right here. And we will go ahead and open that up and see you have your piece of data here. So this may actually be one of the most useful ways to access data that you then need to run with, need to analyze in different ways or include in a report. You can, once you've generated your table, you can download it as an Excel file. It's also possible to download it as a PDF. Very wide tables, if you've put in a dozen different measures and variables, aren't necessarily going to work well as a PDF. In that case, you would just want to generate an Excel download because an Excel file can, of course, be extremely wide. A PDF is limited to what can fit on one screen. But in this case, we have a nice small table. We go ahead and click download of PDF, open it up, and there we have our same piece of information, our same set of data from the table. The information within the report builder does not include 100% of the data that's collected. There are a few specific types of information which just don't work with this kind of analytical tool. This is primarily any fields with a lot of text in them. You can imagine if you were trying to grab a field that had a paragraph of information in it, that would not work well as a table. It would immediately get really huge, really unwieldy, and it makes the tool run very slowly. So that's one kind of information that you can't include. There is also, and I'm going to jump back here to the user guide that we were looking at before. There is one other type of data that you will not find within the system, and it is information that is collected within a type of field in the system that lets users choose multiple items. So if you think about it, you know that when you are filling out a form, there are two kinds of selection buttons. There is generally a round selection button, which limits you to choosing one item only from a list. In this case, and this is a screenshot from the coordination profile, it's square checkboxes, which means that you can, and it notes it up here, choose up to 5 in this particular case, items that apply. This data from these specific fields is also not available within the system. It can't be parsed in the correct way by this kind of analytical tool. So if you are interested in these specific questions, your best bet is going to be within the system, going to the reports page and choosing export country office data, which lets you actually get the raw information for all of the countries, including these fields that aren't in the report builder. And the instructions on how to do that are in the basic user guide, and it was also covered in the recorded trainings, which you'll be able to download. So without further ado, I'm sorry, Carmen, I ran over a little bit, but if you want to go ahead and show us a few other things.
Great, thank you, Martha. So, good morning, everyone. I'll be explaining today how to save a report and how to create a chart from that report, and also, if we have time, I'm going to show you some elements that allow you to manipulate the data to display it in different ways. So, I have this data today in the report, and let's say that I want to restart my query or my report. I will click on the white page and it will ask if I am sure that I want to exit the query. So maybe I want to save it because it's important and I need to access it later today. So I will click on cancel and actually save my query. You click on save query and you write the name of the query and you save it. That allows you to save your query and access it later. And you can also, if I want to look at this report and at the same time look at another report that I'm interested in, I can actually add another tab and I will be able to have two queries at the same time active in the system. So let's say that I close by mistake my training tab and I want to access again that report. I will just click on open query and I will be able to find my query and open it. So that is how you save a query and how you reopen a query. And maybe it's important for you to know that as a normal user, if I save a query, this query will only be visible to me and to the administrators of the system. And if I am an administrator of the system, the queries that I save will be available for all the users in IMS. So now that we have, that I have explained how to save, I'm going to explain to you how we can visualize graphics from a report. So, for example, I'm going to change my measures, and so I have this small report with the regions and the number of interagency groups that are in each region. And let's say that I want to see it as a graph. I go to the right of the screen and click on chart mode, and automatically it will change what is displayed. It will no longer be a table, but a chart. If I want to go back, I click on table mode and it will go back to the table. And so you have to the right different options that allow you to change what you're seeing as a chart. Since this is a pretty simple table, we can, for example, see it as a pie chart, I think, and we can do it as a bar. But we maybe, for instance, if I select stacked bars, it will not be the full potential of this type of graph. So I might need to have a little bit more complex table for this to be useful. I'm going to quickly show you an example of that. For example, I could add the country income status as a column, and I will have a more complicated table. So if I go back to graphs, you will see that now the stack bar allows me to see different elements. I can see for Arab states the number of countries that are LMEC, and the same way this will be visible here. Sometimes it's not very useful the way that it's being displayed because of the access of the table. So you might be able to change them, and it will allow you to see, for example, by country income status, each of the regions, how many there are. So this is a bit of a fast way to see how the charts work. And maybe one last thing is that you can actually export them as PDF or as images. My internet is a bit slow today, but yes, there it is. So you can see it, you can export it as a PDF. And in the 2 minutes that I have left, I'm gonna show you a little bit how you can actually manipulate the data with some small elements. I'm gonna, so let's create a table. Check. So if I choose more than one measure, and I'm going to show it by country or by country. So I have a long list, and as you see, the information will be displayed in alphabetical order. So the systems allows you to manipulate a bit the way that the information is being displayed, the order in which this variable is displayed. So you will go to this little arrow, and you have the possibility to limit the number of variables that are visible. You could do the top 10, which are the top 10 in alphabetical order. You could do it by bottom 10, and it will be the 10 last by alphabetical order. But you could also make them be displayed by the measures, so these elements. And you would be able to choose, here I have chosen 2 measures, so I could choose if I want to see the top 10 by number of interagency groups, or by the count of, is this a result group as defined by the SOPs. So let's do it by number of interagency groups, and you will see that the countries have completely changed. The top 10 are, the first one will be India, and if you do the same, you would get by the bottom 10, you could do the same thing. You could also click on clear limit, and you will have the full table displayed again. You could also sort the table. This would allow you to do from the ascending. So you would get from the smallest number to the biggest number. And you would be able to select here which of the measures you want to select, since there are 2 measure columns in this table. You could also do it descending, so it would be the other way around. I think that my time is done, Martha. Maybe you could answer some questions.
Definitely. Yeah, if
Hi, Martha.
I see a question here about doing sums and totals. Is that
Yes, that's for me, Martha. It would be good if you can cover that in the session before we go into the Q&A. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. So I can go ahead and do that. Carmen, I think you can assign back to me the presenter rights unless you'd like to do it, which is also great. Okay, here we go.
I could. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, here I'll hand it back to you, and you can go ahead and cover that.
Okay. So going back. Let's change from countries, the rows, to region. So Abigail asked us to show you how to show the totals. For example, if we wish to see, you have here the number of interagency groups, and you wish to see in total in the world how many interagency groups there are. You cannot actually see it right now in the table, but there's an option for you to see it. You would go to rows. You would go to the section of grand totals. Grand totals would give you, it's a function that allows you to create another row here at the end of the table with different sorts of totals. So for example, we could click sum, and you have that there are 1,602 interagency groups in the world, or at least in the system right now. And you could also see, for example, what is the minimal. So you would get that the region with the lowest number of interagency groups is 164, corresponds to the Arab states, for example. You could also see the maximum, and you can see the average number by region, which will be 282 by region.
Hi, Carmen. This is Abigail. I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's really good that you're showing that sum total, but can you also show how we disaggregate it by year? Because then people will get confused. Because that sum total is showing it for the 2 years. So it would be good to show it how we separate it between 2015 and 2016 data, so that we can have a total for 2015 and a total for 2016. Thanks.
Excellent. So what I did was that I added the year to the column that allows you to create a column for 2015 and a column for 2016. And you would see here the average for 2015 is 132 and 150 for 2016. And that would work for any of the grand totals. So the sum, it could be the total for 2015 is 745, and it had increased in 2016 to 857.
Great, thank you. Abigail, are there other questions?
Hi, Martha. Okay, thank you very much. Just to check that that part that Carmen just displayed is also in the guide to ensure that users are actually disaggregating the sum by year so that the data is accurate. Just checking that is in the guide. If not, we need to ensure it is in the guide.
It is in the guide, yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So, well, I guess that's the end of this session for now. As Martha said, I mean, I think it would be good if colleagues can download the guide and you start playing around with the tool yourself. And we can obviously field in questions over the next few weeks. But for now, we're ready to take your questions in the chat. So please go ahead and type your questions in the chat so that we can respond to them before we end the session. Thank you.
Okay, we have some questions in the question box. Abigail, would you like me to read some of those off, and then we can take them? Okay, great. There's a question from Sagityan Antyanov. Is it possible to have both table and charts in one exported report?
Good question. That's not currently possible, but you are able to export them separately. And if you'd like, you can usually take a screen capture of one and might be able to merge it with another, say, in Word.
Okay, great. Thanks, Martha. This question you might have answered, but let me just triple check. This is from Gonzalo Camid. Hi, greetings from Uruguay. One question, is it possible to export all measures and variables data in as raw data in matrix format? countries as rows, everything else in columns in Excel, CSV, ASCII, column delimited, SPSS, SAV, or similar. The idea is to merge this data set with other data sets with country level information, GDP, GDP per capita, poverty levels, etc.
That's a good question. So, Carmen, if you want to switch back, can you give me presenter rights, and then I'll be able to share my screen as I answer. The report builder does not allow you to do the kind of export you're talking about. You can do a similar version, I think, to what you're looking for via this export country office data option. So for instance, if you wanted to grab data from the coordination profile, you can go in here, your year is selected, you can choose your form, and you could choose to download for all for a specific region or for a given country. So the amount of data in the system is very, very large. So you can't do the whole world in one download. You would have to do them basically through separate downloads. But this will allow you to download an Excel matrix of your information. I think in your case, one of the important things to know is that you can choose to disaggregate the fields where a user has checked multiple answers, or choose to keep them aggregated, but that will allow you to break the data down to a greater degree of granularity. It is not going to be innately usable in SPSS. That's just not a feature that the system includes, but you should be able to, with this tool, get data that is raw enough that you can convert it so that it matches your needs. And you can see here we have downloaded year by year all of this information. And this is a single form. You'll see here there are just a huge, huge, huge number of columns. So the IMS is a very robust system with a lot of data in it. And I hope that this helps answer the question.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Martha. We have two questions from Connie Wignaraja of DOCO. Is the system able to detect errors, as this is all self-reporting? What is the check or validation on the data?
That's another good question. Abigail, I know you might have thoughts, but I can just say, yes, the data is self-reported. So the work plan portion of the system requires that each office have a validator who reviews what was entered before it's published in the system. We also have controls in place. No data will appear in the report builder unless it is finalized and submitted. So if a country has draft information, maybe they're partway through entering their data or it hasn't been officially confirmed, that's not going to show up in your totals here. But yeah, I think it's a valid concern in terms of just knowing data quality in the system. Abigail?
Thanks, Martha. I think we're also going to follow up on that question here.
Yeah, just to jump in, this is Gina from DOCO. I mean, so obviously a system can't tell. If you answer yes and you should have answered no, no computer system can tell you that you were wrong, right? They're not that smart. However, what would be good to show would be how with this tool you could spot some outliers, right? So if you're looking at specific data and you have some countries hovering around a certain number and other countries either very high or very low, maybe you can run through an exercise to show how you would be able to spot the outliers and then go back to that country and say, are you sure you have 300 people in your UN country team? That seems very high. That would be the sort of, do you mean 30? Did you add an extra 0? So maybe you can show us a sort of visual on how you could spot some outliers on numerical data.
Yes. Let me see if I can find one. I know that I knew a few from a while back. The data may have been cleaned, but we'll take a look here. So in terms of, say, and this is draft data. This is not necessarily live in the system now. So don't take any of this as you know, official. But if we go ahead and we choose from our work plan budget data for country by country, one of the issues we found is the system does want data to be entered in US dollars. Sometimes that gets missed and a country may enter information in local currency or euro or something else. So for instance here, this may be an outlier. Just skimming through, you might be able to see, oh, this number is much larger than other numbers in the region. You can also, using the chart tool, and this is where I think it can get quite interesting. Let me remove one of these measures so we're only dealing with a single column. And if we go over to charts, yes, okay, good. This is the example I was hoping was still in this data. I think that you can all probably guess which country is the outlier here. Then again, this is Syria, so it may not be, but the general idea is that you can take a look and see, oh, okay, as I had noticed in the table, Mali may be particularly high because that data is incorrect. So you could go back and double check with them. You can see these things here. That is something that's definitely worth doing if you think that there may be issues in what you're seeing.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a second question from Connie. Is it possible to also do some projections in the future based on current trends once we have 3 to 4 years of data against many of the measures?
That's a great idea. The system itself does not allow for projections, but you're right that changes over time are something that is going to become an increasingly valuable and interesting way to use the system. In that case, what you would probably be able to do is, if you can imagine, let's say we have 4 years of data, you could go ahead and visualize it as a chart, probably with, I'm imagining an upward trend of over time. And you can, of course, also see how you can also export it into an Excel file and use any external tool to see over time how that data might be changing. So in this case, you can see here, this is just 2 years, but we've grabbed the, and I use that swap axis tool because I wanted to have, I didn't want regions along the bottom. But you can see over time, just with these 2 years, the increase in the count of LTA seems to be most dramatic for Eastern and Southern Africa, for example. So yeah, there's a little bit of that ability within the system, and the projection part is probably something that you would download the data if you wanted to use something, a more robust statistical tool to do that.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much, Martha, for that. We're just looking through our questions, and I think we're coming to the end.
I'll take this one from Albert in Liberia.
Okay, Albert in Liberia.
I got it here.
So maybe we'll take a question
Yeah.
from Albert in Liberia. He says, is it possible to compare 2 or 3 countries to know which one is doing better and which one is not? And the same for regions, for example, comparing West Africa and East Africa.
Absolutely. So this is going to be a place where your filters may come in handy. I'm going to change this same piece of information back into a table here and swapped the axis again so that we're seeing a list of regions. And you can see, let me actually start a new query up here. As Carmen showed you, there are tabs. We'll work with a slightly different piece of data. So we're going to say, okay, the SOPs for delivering is 1. Let's choose, is there an annual common budgetary framework? We're going to say we want to see the count of how many have said yes, there's fully an annual common budgetary framework. And choose region, and this is going to show you, okay, how these regions are performing against one another for this particular answer. If you would like to do it by country rather than region, I'm going to remove region. I'm going to choose country. You can see it here. I'm guessing probably do not want to be seeing all 130 plus countries in the system. So in this case, what you would do is you want your country as your row. You will leave that in the row box, but we click country and we get that same filter option. You'll remember before there was just 2015 and 2016. Now we have every country here. So we could go ahead and let's just choose several countries that are not in the same region, but we'll pretend. And remember, you don't just have to check them. You have to then hit the little arrow to move them over here. And then we're going to say, okay. And you can look at how these countries are performing in relation to one another. And then, of course, to visualize it, you could go ahead and click over here, and you know, different kinds of visualization are more or less useful for different types of data. But yeah, in this case, it's just a yes or a no, so it's either all the way or not all or nothing. But you can imagine that this would be more interesting if it were a variable piece of data like a budget or something like that.
Thank you, Martha. So this is just the final call for any more questions before we round up, questions specific to the training so that we can respond to those. So there's a final call. If there are 1 or 2 more questions, let us know, put them on the chat, and we will respond before we round up the session. Thank you.
And while we're waiting, let me just mention again that within this user guide, you have at the bottom, the final annex is a list of all the fields included in the system. So this is a way that you can figure out where to access the data that you want and which pieces of data are included in the system. And again, that's downloadable from the site itself.
Okay.
So Martha, we think we have 1 question, or at least a couple, so we're just gonna read them out.
Okay.
Yeah. Greetings from Morocco. Will we have access to the documents as annual CBF joint annual work plans from other countries from the data in the IMS? It's a question from...
Yes. So this is actually a separate section of the report tools. We looked, so right now we're looking at the report builder, this button here on the left. We just showed how to export country data in answer to an earlier question. File download is going to be how you are able to any documents uploaded by any other countries. So in this case, you must select a year and you must select which part of the system you're interested in. Coordination profile has the vast majority of documents uploaded. And then you could choose a single country or you can choose a single document. So I think this was the one you mentioned, actually, the Common Budgetary Framework. If I just were to click Submit Now, we would get that for every country in the system. Instead, I'm going to choose just for a single region. And I'm actually going to choose for last year because I think the data is a little more complete. So in this case, we'll hit Submit. and it takes a little while to generate sometimes. Okay, there are no files for this one, but what you would see is a list of all the files that meet that this combination of selections so that you are able to download, compare, learn from what your colleagues in other country teams have done. And here we go, here we go. So this is for 2016, quite a number of documents. You can skim through, they're all sorted by country alphabetically. Or if you'd like, you can just click all documents and it downloads them one big zip file.
Excellent. Thank you, Martha. So I think that was the last question. So we're going to round up the session now. Just to say thank you for all the colleagues staying online. I know it's quite late for some of you. So thank you, and thank you to Martha and Carmen from Development Gateway, and thank you to colleagues here in New York. We will now round up the session. And the recordings of all the 3 sessions we have done will be made available on the IMS as soon as possible, and we will communicate to you when they're ready. Thank you. Goodbye.